So, Emily, my partner currently in running this group, and I got together and we decided, you know what? We would just like to have it be all women, and we would like to have it be not a ton of work for us. So, we don't have to figure out some new and fabulous experience every time. We could just once a month meet at a coffee shop and we move them around various parts of town. 2 hours, women come, we just all hang out and socialize, drink some coffee, um, and talk about all things sober. And we've been doing that, I think it's like 10 months now. And we have about, I think it's coming up on 130 members.
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Teri Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, hey, it's Teri back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and I am delighted to have one of my favorite people here with me today to talk about something that many of you have brought to my attention, experienced on your alcohol-free journey. And really, it's time to talk about how do we create in real life, in-person events that support us on this journey. And so I am delighted to welcome Sarah Showard, my friend, to the podcast today. She is also my Sober Edge book club partner. We are sober besties. I hope that's okay to say on your behalf, Sarah.
Absolutely.
And Sarah has, we don't live in the same town. And so while we feel a great sense of community around meeting virtually, it is some of those real life events that have created the friendship that we now have. And so Sarah went on a journey to look for some sober girlfriends. And Sarah, tell us a little bit about what you found.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. I'm like so excited because I've listened to your podcast, gosh, since you were one of my coaches on the path. And I've never been a guest on a podcast. Woohoo. So thank you. In fact, this is my podcast. I'm a podcast virgin, but I won't be soon.
There you go. There you
Yes.
go. That's how it works. I get to be the first one for many people. I've been their first
Oh,
host, and I love that. It's such a treat because I just love to have a conversation because this is where when we have a conversation and we are sharing the real things that happen, I think it's just even more impactful.
yes, absolutely. So, I met Terry through the path. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the path, it is a year-long, pretty intensive course. And at the time I joined the path, I really wanted to quit drinking, obviously. But I didn't know anybody locally who wanted to quit drinking. All my friends were perfectly happy drinking a lot. So the path was a wonderful experience. And it was, I mean, literally every day you'd watch a video, you could go on a Facebook Live, you could go on an actual coaching Zoom, and I met some wonderful women through the process, and I just felt really connected. And I don't know, well, I had tried before to quit drinking on my own, and I really needed the support of the community. So that was well. Okay, well, so how did this come about? The path ended.
Yep, as things do, right?
Yes, and so this, like, daily support all of a sudden was gone, and I looked around and I was like, "I don't have any friends locally that I can hang out with," and I did make some friends where we stayed in touch after the path, a couple of meetups where we all met in one place, and in fact, I've been to Australia to to visit Rachel, my bestie from the path. And I just really I felt alone. And I picked a strange time to quit drinking. I mean, any time is a good time. But at that point, I was going through menopause.
Mm.
I was kind of starting to move into a semi-retirement situation with my job. Decided I was going to quit my antidepressants. I was like, okay, let's just do everything at once. So I was really, really looking for connection at that point.
And you bring up such an important point because it's been said that the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
And in any successful group program that I have been a part of for when it comes to changing our relationship with alcohol, there is a community part, a component. And that has been often that really lifeline for people because I think that one of the things that can happen in our drinking and over drinking journey is that we feel isolated. And drinking often isolates us from other people. We might be drinking alone. We might be reluctant to share how much we're drinking. We might do what many of my clients have done is go to an event and have one drink and then rush home to drink more. And so if we think about it, we have created this dynamic where we're not as social perhaps as we once were. And as you mentioned, we go through these life stages where maybe one of the big connectors was when our children were in high school and they were on sports teams. Well, that goes away as our children grow up and move out of the house. And then, like you said, a career change can make a difference in how we are connecting to other people. And so now we are doing something that sometimes can make us feel like a social pariah. It's like, well, how do I go to social events and there's no alcohol? Am I going to stand out? Am I going to be that person? Are people going to want to hang out with me? So when we have a connection with a community who's not drinking, we two things happen, I think. One is that we see that we're not alone in this journey. Like, oh, you did that too, or you had that same experience, or you felt that way. And that can feel really hopeful and helpful because we're suddenly part of something bigger than just our own stories that we're creating. And then the other thing that happens is we see that it can be a lot of fun to hang out with people who aren't drinking. In fact, Sarah and I have had some of the best times hanging out in real life at the Sober in the City events. We're getting ready to go to another one. It's been like 7 times we've traveled together. She came here to visit me in my town. I went to Tucson to visit her. And so these friendships that we form from these communities can branch out and create really supportive friendships. And so I think there's a couple reasons that having a community is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things when I decided to stop drinking, one of my big fears was losing my friends. And when I quit drinking, I said, "Look, I can do everything I did before. I just won't drink. I can hang out with the same people. I can go to the same places. I can have big parties. I just won't drink." And I tried that actually for it was about 9 months. And it just was so isolating. I'd be in this group of people who I thought that I was close to, and I felt completely excluded. I just, there's a point where you're no longer on the same plane with the person. Up to like that second drink, it's all good and fun. And then they go beyond that. And, the connection is gone. And so, as you're saying, when you are with, like-minded, sober women, there's just this immediate connection almost. And even people who you might not necessarily have a lot in common with, this one thing is so significant. This one choice that we've made, and the choice to be present and to be real and to be open to connection. And so, I experienced that in the path, and I met people I just love. And like you said, we go to these sober in the city events, and I might meet somebody I don't know anything about them, but immediately you're just like, oh, hey, hi, hug. I mean, it's just such a welcoming environment, and it's been great fun to have these connections with women on Zoom, and then actually get to see them in life and give them big fat hugs. And just look forward to those opportunities like the Sober in the City, which, is once or twice a year that you're going to just be there in a big group of supportive women.
Yeah, and the reason I really wanted to have Sarah on the podcast today is because Sarah's done something that a lot of my clients have talked about, and you maybe in your own alcohol-free journey, listening to this, have thought about. But Sarah actually did it. So Sarah is so resilient and so dynamic and perseveres. And she said, I want to figure out how I can have friends in real life. And I was like, wait, I'm your friend. But she was right. We can't just grab coffee together. We can't go work out together on a regular basis. We meet on a regular basis and we love the time that we spend together, but it's not like having somebody who's down the street or you can drive over and meet in person. And so Sarah said, I want to find a group of women. And so, like many of us, one of the suggestions is always, well, you can go to Meetup and see if there's a local group of people hanging out and doing the thing you want to do, be it hiking, bowling, crafting, flower arranging, showing up alcohol free. And so Sarah went on a quest to see what was around in her local community. And I'm going to let her tell the story, but I'm going to be a spoiler because when the group that Sarah initially joined didn't work out, Sarah created her own group. And this is where I really want to hear more, Sarah, about, how you navigated all of this and the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as the path was ending, I started whining and complaining that there was nothing in Tucson. Tucson's not a huge place, but it's also not tiny. I mean, we got like 1 million people here in the surrounding areas. So I said, "Oh, meetup, great idea." So I put in my search, and it pops up, and it says, "No results for your search." It's like, really, really. And so a couple of months went by and I searched again. And I didn't actually remember how long it was, but at one point I saw this pop up that it was called Tucson AF. So alcohol free, even though we know that can mean other things. And I was like so excited. Yes, 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 is exactly what I need. And it was just starting up. And the woman who started it was kind of trying to feel out and see, if there were people who would be interested. So she had a couple of like little Zoom introductions, and then we went to the very first meetup event. And I'm so excited. Well, what do I wear? Who am I going to meet? Anyway, so I showed up, and it was at this outdoor venue with food trucks around. And I think there was about maybe 20 people. It was a pretty good turnout. And it was, interestingly, about two-thirds men. And it was around this big table, and everybody kind of took their seat and ended up, talking to the people who were right next to them. And it was a strange experience for me because I really wanted to go out and meet some sober girlfriends, women I could hang out with. And I got seated with like two guys on one side, another guy across from me. And the gist of it is that I think a lot of men think meetup means hookup. And so there was a lot of, this one guy sitting next to me was, "Oh, well, where do you live?" And I said, "Oh, well, we go back and forth from Tucson to Sonoita." He's like, "Who's we?" I'm like, "Well, me and my husband." "You're married?"
Yeah. Hello.
What the heck? What the heck? Um, and I'm engaged and married, and I'm like, why are these guys kind of hitting on me? And then I was able to talk to the woman who started it a little bit. Really, really nice woman, quite a bit younger than I am. It seemed like a relatively good mix of ages, but I did get turned off after that experience. So I think I attended maybe one or two more. um, One was like a more of a coffee meetup, and that was the one I liked the best.
Mhm.
It was casual, and I kind of managed to meet a few different people, and I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't. I wasn't getting what I wanted. I wasn't leaving there, like, with somebody's phone number that I could go hang out with, or just really feeling connected. And that group, they did a lot of events. I mean, they
Mhm.
would meet up at a lunch or dinner place. They would go for a tea tasting. There were, meeting up at the farmer's market, that sort of thing. So a lot of the focus was on the activity that you were doing, as opposed to just chatting and connecting. So it was a lot of work. And there were 3 women. Well, actually, okay, it started out as Tucson AF, and somebody else started a group called Unbuzzed. And when they realized, they combined the 2 of them. So there were 3 women who were moderating. And it was a lot of work, and there was a lot of criticism and complaints and that they were dealing with. And so I think they were doing it about 2 years, and they said, "We think we've got what we wanted out of this. We're going to, step back. If somebody else wants to take over, you can step up and do that." And I I was interested, but I also didn't love it. I just thought it was an important thing to have, something there for sober people. So at that point, another woman who was interested in continuing it, um, posted that she was interested. I said, "Hey, let's talk. Let's see if we can't do this together." And we talked about the things we did like and that we didn't like about the prior group. And the biggest thing we didn't like was the men. Sorry. And I was not the only one who had experienced these problems. There had been quite a few issues, and I think actually the last one that I really went to was one that I instigated, and that was at Total Wine here in town. It was in January, and it was dry January. They did a whole meetup. I call it a meetup, a whole session on making mocktails, and there's this one guy and my husband came. He actually attended that one, and the guy's, like, hitting on me right in front of him. Like, come on. I was, like, old enough to be this guy's mom too, we'll just throw that in there. But just weird and inappropriate, stuff. So Emily, my partner currently in running this group, and I got together and, we decided, you know what? We would just like to have it be all women. And we would like to have it be not a ton of work for us, so we don't have to figure out some new and fabulous experience every time. We could just once a month meet at a coffee shop, and we move them around, various parts of town. 2 hours, women come, we just all hang out and socialize, drink some coffee, um, and talk about all things sober. And we've been doing that, I think it's like 10 months now, and we have I think it's coming up on 130 members.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. That is such a cool story. And, as you were sharing, Sarah, I think there's so many key things that you talked about. And so, I kind of want to just lay out like what you said was super important. So you have to have a mission if you're going to form a meetup. And first of all, do it. Like, don't wait for someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Look and see if there's something there. And instead of lamenting the fact that nothing's there, there's no sober people to hang out with, use Sarah as an example. Get involved, figure out what you need, help other people to get what they also want in this alcohol-free journey. And so I think you really hit on some key things is, really define the group so that it meets the criteria that makes it work for you. And yeah, if somebody wants to make it an experiential, more of a complicated thing, then that's one group. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a place for just a coffee meetup and talking about the dynamics of the stages we go through and how to support one another and really just literally feeling like you're not the only woman out there going through this experience. And so I love that you simplified it, that you have a partner, I think is also really helpful, that you do it once a month. And oh my goodness, 130 women who now have the opportunity to feel like there is a connection point for them. And I know from the coaching aspect that having that is just so key when we think like, well, there's nothing for me, so I guess I'll just gonna have to go back to trying to drink moderately or trying to fit in over here and maybe drinking occasionally or isolating myself further. And the reality is, no, it doesn't have to be that way. But we also can't just wait for someone else to create this experience. And so I think that's why I really admire what you've created there in Tucson. And I believe it's Tucson Sober Girlfriends, which I love. So that really have a name that helps people understand that this is not a hookup event. It's defined by, the fact that it's female only. And I just think you've done a lot of things really right. And then I know also from knowing you and talking about what's working, what you've tried, is that it's not like you never do something outside of just getting together for coffee. You've had some holiday events, and I think that's really fun. So then you can get playful with it, and you don't have to do it all on your own. For example, people might have ideas they want to bring into, and then they can come and share and, maybe it's something that would be really beneficial for the group. You don't have to do it all.
Yes, no, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate Emily. She's been a fabulous, partner in this, and it's kinda nice too because we're definitely in different generations and the group so I think that makes people feel comfortable that it's not just like, they're all super young or all, older as I may be. And, it's I would have thought well, when I first realized there was nothing there, I didn't even know how. I was like, "Well, how would you create something?" And so being in that first group, I got a feel for it. And Meetup is a really awesome thing because you don't the people are on there. Everybody on there is looking for something. And what you do is, you put in the interests, and you could there's some that maybe have two or three. I mean, there's a lot of activities, alcohol free, girlfriends meet up, that sort of thing. And so you go on and you say what you're about, and people just come to you. It's like no advertising, and all of a sudden I get these emails. Somebody wants to join your group. Somebody wants to join your group. I'm like, bam, bam, bam. We're popular. So it's just not that hard if you are someplace where you're not finding a meetup group or another group of sober people to hang out with. It's jump in, check it out. There is a cost associated with it, and we haven't had to. We took over after the last group, so we haven't hit our 1 year, but I think it's around $130. And what most groups do is they post, "Hey, will anybody contribute? $5, $10, whatever." And there are other groups who actually charge for attendance, and of course, we don't want to do that because we want it to be open to everybody. So those who can contribute more can, and those who can't don't. And that's worked out really, really well for us.
I love it. And yeah, by just sort of passing the hat or asking for volunteer contributions. Oh my gosh. Imagine what we used to spend just on one cocktail. Imagine you paid $5 a month to join this cool group, and you would have spent $15 or $20 with a tip on a cocktail, which is
Oh,
basically attractively
easily.
packaged poison, right?
A
And
very good
so
deal.
yeah. Yes, it is. Well, yeah, and you bring up a really good point. Like there is a really simple, practical system that's already in place, and that's a great place to start. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not trying to people might think like, gosh, I have to pay for advertising, or I have to print flyers. And the reality is no. And it's funny, you're reminding me of an experience when I was first getting ready to train as an alcohol-free coach. I was already a nutritionist. I created a little event in my town, which is a very small town. And I didn't do it on Meetup. All I think I did is post it on our local county, Facebook group, and printed a couple flyers, and I think 2 people came, right? But it doesn't mean if I kept doing that, it would grow. And so, Sarah, I would imagine that you don't have 130 women showing up to every event.
No, good Lord, no. No, definitely not. We usually, and people do RSVP. We usually get RSVPs somewhere in the range of maybe 12 to 20 people. We do have a fair number of no-shows oftentimes. And there's also some groups who have a very strict policy that if you don't show up 3 times, you get kicked out. We do not have any policy like that. And I think that's important for the type of group that we have because I can imagine maybe before the path, I would be like, "Oh, I want to go to this," and then I would be scared or I would drink. It just was very uncomfortable. So, so we try to be very supportive. Show up if you can. And we have had people who are very early on. At the at each time we get together, we usually go around and do like a little brief introduction. And I always say if feel free to share how long you have been sober or don't if you're not comfortable. And I mean, we have people who are like 40 years, and we have people who are, I think the last one somebody said 28 days. Yeah, and so it's really nice to have the ability to give the support people who have been sober a lot longer to share some tips and tricks and and advice. Um, and we try to we don't we'll have a topic kind of back up. We don't necessarily if people just want to chat, we don't have to. It doesn't have to be that formal. But for example, around the holidays, we talked about holiday experiences. How difficult it may or may not be with family gatherings and friends gatherings. In February, we talked about love, dating, and sex sober. So that was fun, and the last meetup, we actually because we had a newer member, um, we all talked about the Quit Lick books that had helped us, other, things that had worked and not worked for us, and she was super appreciative, and it just it felt really good.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, Sarah, that as the moderator, having something prepared can be a place of just feeling like a comfort level, and yet you don't have to use it. We can also just, let things sort of unwind and free flow. And this is not coaching, so you're not a coach. You don't have it set up, to necessarily deliver anything. It really is just using the connection to help people feel encouraged and supported and seen and heard. And I think that's what's so beautiful about creating a meetup. Is it looks different. It fills a void that is different. Like somebody can have can hire an alcohol free coach and you please do, right? If that's
If you're gonna do it, big hits for Terry.
but I mean, if that's what you need, that one-on-one support or small group support, that's great. And having a coach or somebody who has skills around walking you through some of the transitions is great. But also, there is such value in having peer-to-peer support. It's why groups like 12-step programs have worked for, you know, decades because we recognize that being in a group of like-minded community people, there's less judgment and it really does feel supportive. So I just think it's brilliant what you're doing. I'm so excited for you. And I just really appreciate you sharing that it doesn't have to be super complicated, expensive, doesn't eat up all your time. And we don't have to sit back and lament that nobody's doing the thing. We can step up and do the thing. So
If I can do it, anybody can do it. Come on.
yeah, Sarah likes to call herself an introvert, but I'm not really sure that's true. Sarah likes to have a good time, and that's the thing. I think that the empowerment of being able to define what you need from the group, and then just attract those people, because we don't need to try to be the one-stop shop for everybody. We can create what we need and then invite people to join us in the experience. And we can be open and curious about shifting things slightly along the way. And I just think it's really empowering to consider, like there is the perfect community group is out there, and it might be that you're a part of it, and it might be that you create it. So, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing. And if people want to, who are in the Tucson area, would like to connect with Tucson Sober Girlfriends, how do they get in touch with you?
Actually, you can just pop right on Meetup and search Tucson Sober Girlfriends, and we will be there, and we will be happy to have you join and provide any support and lots of fun.
Awesome. I love that. And I would be remiss if I didn't invite you to the other community that Sarah and I are a part of, which is our Sober Edge Book Club, which coming up on 2 years now, Sarah, that we have been reading and hanging out together. Right now, we're reading The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. We love to have alcohol free women come sober curious, sober serious. If you're looking to do more reading and have more laughs and more connection, it's a fabulous place to hang out as well.
Come join us.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.